I did a quick update today. This took quite a lot of debugging and I've not been putting much time into it, but I've fixed scene loading to handle multiple scenes. So here we can see these white cubes represent two scenes in the distance. One is just a few objects I've thrown down, one's a couple of trees, they were just test objects. However, what I've done is I've modeled a quick shop and I've thrown in some interior objects to try and show the demonstration. So you see the shop down at the end of the street. Now what's key to look at here is at the moment I'm using about 1235 megabyte of graphics RAM. As I move toward the shop and get within the draw distance, it puts all the objects inside. Now you can see here it's streaming a bunch of objects inside there, textures for the objects inside there, and you can see the memory going up quite substantially. Now everything in this little shop unit is fully normal map, so it's loading 3 textures for every object, and a lot of them are quite large. In fact, most of the textures, I think there was 65 meg textures or something like that. It's just a bunch of free objects I got offline, but it's just to demonstrate the purpose. So if I kind of go back, as soon as I get out with the distance that the shop draws that interior, you see it disappears, and the memory goes back down. So again, as soon as I come up to it, starts drawing all that back in, as you can see. Now what I'm going to do is just quit out of this, and I'm going to demonstrate how this works. Now I have used the slower technology for these textures, and they're not optimized. They should all be much smaller, especially the normals. I don't think I need a 65 meg normal texture on these, but that's what they came with and they suit the purpose. So what I've done is I've just halved the distance that I have to get to scenes in order for them to load. So this time when it loads in, you'll see that the 2 test scenes that I have in the middle of the map, they won't actually render until I go a bit closer because I'm now too far away, and the shop I'll have to get much closer before it's going to do anything. So I'm just going to give it a second because at the moment it's streaming in all the textures for the world round about. So there we go. So if I can get a bit closer to these scenes, you can see they now draw in. And just move away and go back to go and look at my shop. Now this time I'm going to go into the shop really quickly, and you're going to actually see the textures just pop in. So you can see here they're all blurry textures in the boxes, and that's them popping in as the system streams through it. And then finally you'll see one of the last textures, I think, is the normal and specular in the table, and you can see that it just drew in. So this is an example of where the internal scenes, now the system can handle up to 100 scenes simultaneously. So you could have a series of internal areas, and one of the things I could do is build this into a scene here. Well, actually I think I did one already. So you can see this internal building area has some furniture in it there that was added. So you can have these scenes set to render from varying trigger points. At the moment it's just set to distance. You could have, as I said before, you could have the internals of a flat set to only draw the internal scenes. If you're actually within a confined cube space, for example, so you draw a cube around, say, the top couple of floors of that thing, and it's only if you're within that space it will then actually draw that scene. But you can see you can jump about quite happily, and obviously with the textures fully optimized, this would work much faster and smoother. And instead of trying to load in quite literally a gigabyte worth of textures here, and again it works in full game mode, so I can just drop into first person mode and find the shop. There we go. And even in game mode, as I get closer, you can see it flies around. Now at the moment I've got 144 hertz monitor, so it's set to go to sync to the frame rate. That's why I'm getting 144 frames per second. But I've set the streaming cap at 60 frames per second. So what the system essentially does is it looks to see how long it's taken to render the image. If you've got a really fast processor or it's not needed, then what it'll do is it'll take the frame rate down to 60 frames per second, put all spare resources into streaming anything that's needed in the background. So you can see as soon as it comes in there, frame rate drops right down, still hovering on 60. But it's streaming all these textures in the background. That's a 4096 by 4086 texture. So was that an 8K texture? So these are ridiculously large. You would not usually use them. Particularly on the monitor there, the keyboard is like an 8K texture. It's got an 8K normal and an 8K specular. It's absolutely insane. But as I say, they're not my models, they just came offline. So fully functional scenes. What I now need to do is just tweak some traffic, build into pedestrians, so that pedestrians and traffic work simultaneously, and that should be me pretty close to a fully functional open 3D world that can have about as much detail as you want to put in it.